The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we will review the final game of the year for Austin FC. We will discuss Austin FC 2's victory in the MLS Next Cup final, and we'll also be joined by Adrian Healey and Michael Lahoud to answer listener questions and maybe opine about the off season and maybe make a few predictions ourselves. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I cannot be more excited to be joined by these two gentlemen who are both, it look like in different places than when they normally are. But thanks for joining us, guys. Thank you, Adrian and Michael, for coming on the show, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Hey, guys, always a treat to come on. Me and Michael have always loved what you've done right from day one, right from before day one, before there was even an Austin. I was tuning in. So yeah, it's great to be able to come on with another season in the bag.
So we've got Adrian Healey, of course, former play-by-play for Austin FC, current Apple TV, MLS on Apple TV commentator. And then Michael, you are now officially CBS talent. Is that correct?
I'm in the mixer. You can say that. I'm knee deep in the mixer. Announcement coming soon. Can't say more than that. But okay. knee deep in the mixer.
Well, I don't think it's much of a secret because I've seen you on CBS on TV.
No secret here. No. Working with CBS and still got my heart full of Verde somewhere in there.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to touch on that we talked about briefly before. It's like you guys are broadcast partners, but I feel like you didn't spend a ton of time together in Austin, right? I mean, this club's only started playing a couple years ago, but it seems like y'all have formed a relationship that's a little bit deeper than just like two guys in a booth. Like, how did that happen? Do you want to share on that a little bit, sort of as we maybe get through this chapter of Austin FC?
Sure, I'll go in first. Very special friendship I feel like I have with Mr. L, as we like to call ourselves, Mr. L and Mr. H. Very special. You get to work with a lot of different people in this business, and it's nearly always very professional. You can do what you do on the air, but it's not necessarily a firm friendship off the air. But I feel like that's what we had right from day one, and it was really, really special. And it's one of those things you can't really explain. We just clicked, didn't we, Michael? Even though you're a Man United fan, I was prepared to overlook. No, it's been fantastic. And for me, being new in Austin, Michael was already here, albeit in San Antonio. It was everything about it just was perfect, right from day one. And we'll be firm friends for forever, for sure. And we'll always look back on these 2 years with glowing sort of memories, I'm sure.
Yeah, I remember going through the interview process, and prior to wanting to work with Austin FC, I remember talking with my wife, and she'd asked me a question. It's actually the first time sharing this, but she'd asked me a question of, if you could dream the biggest dream, who is the one broadcaster you'd want to work with? And I was like, oh my gosh, it's easy. Adrian Healey. And she was like, well, that's funny. He's the guy that you'd be working with if you get this job. So that seemed like eons ago. That seemed like in my wildest dreams. And then getting the phone call from Adrian, even before finding out getting the job, but getting the phone call from Adrian, there's a lot that you see on TV. There's a lot that you see, and you have a perception of someone, but I was struck by the humanity of just easy to talk to and someone that you look up to. But I'll never forget, you said this to me, Adrian. I've worked with a lot of people, but at the end of the day, I'm looking for a friend, not just a coworker. Yeah. And that was like, oh my gosh, me too. I didn't know you could have a friend in the booth. And we kind of clicked on from there.
Yeah. Our wives became friends. Even our dogs became friends. I mean, it's really...
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's true.
Well, it's very noticeable when you guys got to call a game together. Sadly, we didn't get to hear that this year, but you guys are still both doing great work in your own respects. We want to get you guys to help us out answering some listener questions here in a little bit. First, I think we should go through the San Jose game, this last game of Austin's 2023 season. Not a lot to talk about with this one. A, because the stakes were nothing pretty much. But B, not a lot happened also. So we can spend a little bit of time on this, and then we'll get onto those listener questions and let that be kind of the main meat of the show. But yeah, let's dive into this game real quick. So San Jose versus Austin, 1-1 draw. Ended up with the first half, not many shots at all. And then more in the second half, mostly by way of San Jose, but still not a ton of dangerous chances. And the ones that were, I mean, I guess Brad Stuver had a big game in stopping a few of the dangerous chances that San Jose did have. But Adrian, you were on the call for this one. What was your take on this game?
Yeah, I just came away feeling sort of that it was an odd game in so many ways, because it was, there was a lot on the line for San Jose. There wasn't really much on the line for us, for Austin, but at the same time, there was, because it was a last chance to leave a good impression and chance to win against them for the first time. And I thought the first half was decent. I thought Austin held their own in the first half, and probably that scoreline was a fair one heading in at halftime. Great goal from Owen Wolff. We kind of gave them the goal, didn't we, with a patented giving the ball away out of the back move, which Espinosa was the grateful recipient of. And then at 1-1, it was like, all right, what's going to happen in the second half? The glove's going to come off. Well, San Jose took the gloves off, and we kind of didn't, which was weird. It almost felt like we were bunkering in right from the start of the second half, trying to cling on to this point, which I'm not sure what the point of that was. But anyway, that was the approach of Austin, and San Jose took complete control. And you know, the Abobasi shot off the post was as close as they came. Stuver was busy and big, and in the end, we did get that point and that draw. But and San Jose got what they needed too. So it was I just came away feeling odd about the whole game.
Yeah, from like an academic perspective, I think you can look at a game like one more opportunity where Austin did struggle to get any results on the road. Not even talking about wins, like we couldn't even get draws on the road a lot of times. So like from an academic perspective, you look at it and say like, okay, here's an opportunity to like work on like getting a gritty draw on the road. But emotionally, it feels like a weird thing to do on the last game of the season where the game doesn't actually matter.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask Michael if he sensed that oddness watching from afar.
Yeah, I did. We were previewing the match, and Decision Day was a ton of fun. And it's funny, they were like, which match do you want to watch? And the guy in the control room turns on the TV, and it's Adrian and Kobe Jones there. And I'm like, yeah, I think the one with Healey on there. Just keep it there. Don't put any. So it was fun to just watch, and then you start remembering all the chaotic games against San Jose. And that's the one opponent where there will be chaos. You're guaranteed chaos. And this was the one match where the chaos on the turnover, okay, that's San Jose. It's kind of what we've done playing against San Jose, turning the ball over in bad spots. But when the Owen Wolff goal went in, it was like, wait a second, this is different. And for Nick Lima, former San Jose player, to get that cross, I know Nick Lima's had an up and down season. I really, there's a sentimental experience for him, knowing that there's a lot of uncertainty about what this year or what this offseason could hold for him. A lot of players that have been here from year one and are now in year three. What does year four hold for them? Alex Ring getting the nod. A lot of question marks I walked away from more than answers in this. Good to see the team get a point, but more question marks for me. Biggest one, where in the world is Dani Pereira?
Yeah,
why now? You know?
Let's get into that. So the starting lineup comes up, and I think is it the exact lineup we've seen the last two games, or pretty close to it, if not exactly the same. But you see Cascante and Vicen as the center backs, Lima and Gallagher, who had switched back to their
they flipped, but the same guys,
traditional spots, which I'm guessing that must have been like a matchup thing. I'm not sure why they switched in the last game, but and then you have Ring and Valencia playing the two deeper lying mids. You had Driussi and Wolff playing the two attacking mids, and then in the attacking shape, you had Gallagher pushing up as kind of the wide left winger. You had Finley as the right winger. And then Lima was kind of staying back and playing as kind of like that flex center back / attacking fullback whenever he saw an opportunity to go forward. And then Rigoni was playing as the striker and dropping in between lines occasionally, but he was nominally the number 9 there. But yeah, no Dani Pereira. I think there was like a lot of things to speculate about. I think Wolf said as much after one of the last games where this happened. It was just like that like it's a better defensive midfield without Dani in there. He didn't say it exactly that way, but I, for one, agree with him. I think it's such a tough decision to make, though, because Dani's so special with the things that he's good at. And then the things that he's not good at are like real problems for this team. And so it's like, it's hard to leave him off of the field. But at the same time, when it's a team who struggles so much in defensive transition, Ring and Valencia are so much better in those moments than it is. So it's a really tough thing. And like, it got me thinking, like, what is this? Because we don't know what Dani's contract situation looks like, right? So like, is Dani on the way out? Are they trying to sell him? What the deal is? But Jeremiah, like Coach Wolf's comments after the game, kind of he kind of settled that. He didn't really, like, the way that he phrased it made it seem like, no, this was just a personnel choice for the game, but like he didn't make it sound like this meant anything for the future.
Because he said he's a tremendous player, and he's 3 years into it. He's a tremendous player. He's got a lot. He's going to continue to mature. He's got to continue to find ways to use his voice, his performance as well. So it seems like it was just in his take, like a matchup issue and what Austin needed, which maybe to Adrian's point seems like weird in a game where like you don't really need to be defensive. Like, who cares? Yeah. Like the result out of it, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's just trying to send a long-term message and that's what he's doing. And I would be super interested, like, in Michael's take as a former player, how you respond to that. And then also what you think about that, Adrian.
Oof, man, if I'm Dani Pereira, I have hair, but I probably wouldn't have hair after that decision because I wanted to pull my dreadlocks out. And I've got a lot of them. I don't understand that. I don't. Typically what happens at the end of a season is you want to take a look in the last couple of games of a season. You want to take a look at who's staying, who's going. By the last game of the season, you want to start thinking about next year. And you want to start putting players and pieces out there that represent what is going to be an audition for next year. If Dani Pereira, which he should be, I hope he is, he should definitely be it if you're Josh Wolf. Dani Pereira, looking at that matchup versus San Jose, Dani Pereira has played well against San Jose. You go back to last season in that 2-2 draw, Danny P was the one who drew the penalty on the second goal. So the matchup question is, if you don't like him as a defensive midfielder, thank God he's not a defensive midfielder. He's a number 8 for crying out loud. And Adrian and I, we've had this conversation. Gosh, we almost wanted to get some local whiskey to just ice our brains about it. Yeah, but he is a number 8. He's not a 6.
So, but yeah, in this shape, in this midfield, and maybe this is a different argument that you don't play this shape, but when you have this like midfield shape where you have 2 deeper lying players and 2 more attacking midfield players, do you play him as one of the 2 deeper guys and let Valencia or Ring or whoever it is sit deeper than him? Like, where do you put him in that shape?
I'd be keen to hear Adrian's point before I get mine.
Yeah, well, again, I'm going to use the word odd. Everything about this is odd to me. The night was odd. The recent treatment of Dani Pereira is odd, but it continues on from a theme of 2 years of oddness. Because to Michael's point, we've been told till they were blue in the face by the brains trust and the coaching staff that yes, Dani Pereira is a number 6. He's a number 6. We were told that for 2 years, and each time we were told it, the two of us looked at each other with puzzlement, saying, well, yeah, he can play there, but is that the best use of his skill set? Not remotely. And to Michael's point, we've always thought from day one he was a number 8. He was a box-to-box midfielder. But it seemed like he was being asked to play number 6 so that others could play further forward at times in previous seasons and maybe even into this season. And now, finally, he's discovered that Johan Valencia is actually a really, really serviceable defensive midfielder. That took a time for that to happen, about a year and a half. But I guess your question is a valid one, because if you are going to play two out and out defensive midfielders, then maybe Dani isn't one of those. So then where else does he go?
And I don't think he can play one of the further forward ones either, because I don't think he's got the creative ability in that final third like you would want to have in one of those positions. And so he's one of those. I've said this for a long time now, that he's the new Darlington Nagbe. He's so good at a few like really specific things, but you have to have the right pieces around him. And Nagbe has that in Aiden Morris next to him in Columbus right now. And that pair is really good. And I think like that's what Dani needs, is just like the right person next to him. And maybe Valencia Ring is that guy, and if you use him the right way. But I don't know what the right answer with him is.
Yeah, I'm so glad you bring that up, because the question becomes really, Dani Pereira is still a number 8. The question is, what is Alex Ring? He's a defensive midfielder. He's not a box-to-box midfielder. That is where the conundrum, that is where the misplacement of positions happens. The battle of sixes is between Alex Ring and Johan Valencia. That is your 1-2. Whoever wins that battle is your 6. And then your number 8, well, let's roll the dice. Alex Trebek, options please. It's between Dani Pereira and Owen Wolf for that number 8 position. But therein lies a big competition battle.
In this formation, there's not really an 8. And so right. Maybe that begs the question, like, should we even be playing this shape then? But I don't know. It's complicated.
Yeah. You're opening up much, much bigger questions here, Ryan, which we probably don't have time to go into. But for me, it's simple. Your best 2 players on this entire squad by a country mile, it's not even close, are Sebastian Driussi and Dani Pereira. Yeah. You have to play those players in their best position. Surely, whatever formation you want to call it, getting the best out of those 2 players is your primary responsibility. I don't think we got the best out of either of them of late.
Yeah, I don't think that is not a hard point to argue from what we saw this year out of him. Like, and Driussi even talked about that. I have one more thing, like, because Michael, you touched on it, and then we can get into maybe we can like get into the questions part. But last week, somebody mentioned that the team didn't have a lot to play for, and Ethan Finley said, "Well, look, there's a lot of us playing for a contract, and that means a lot coming into the last match." And I assume your experience as a player that you believe that. So did either or any of the 3 of you did anybody actually make a case for themselves with how they played against San Jose to like get that additional like time or extend their contract, or like was it just more of the same?
It's overall, when you look at the numbers, and Adrian, you were there, you got the feeling of it. You can speak probably more to it, but from the outside looking in the final game of the season, I'm looking for character stuff. If you get a goal, which Owen Wolf does, Nick Lima, a player who is playing for a spot on this team, and just because you may not be playing for a contract, your job is still on the line. You don't know what's happening in the trade window. You don't know what's happening with just coaches' conversations. You could be on the block, irregardless of if you have a contract and you think, okay, I'll be in Austin next year. You could be on the next flight out of Austin before you know it. But when I look at those things, it is really hard just watching how that game unfolded. The fact that the team didn't give up, you go down a goal, you get one back, that's a positive. But it was harder to see any one person that's not already in the fold and will be there next year. I didn't really get a sense of like, you know what, that's a guy that they should go all in and say, let's get him, let's bring him in. He's a character guy, he's a culture guy. Speaking of those things, though, Ethan Finley, as a human being, as and Adrian, you and I have had him on Verde Lights in the studio, just an impressive person who knows the game of soccer, who knows Major League Soccer. And I think he has more to give beyond just what he does on the field. I think that is someone who I would put my name in the hat for keeping around in terms of building a culture moving forward.
Yeah.
I totally agree with, as far as, I don't think this weekend was Finley's best performance. And if that was his audition for getting a new contract, I don't think it was a good one, but his body of work throughout the season, as far as just like being a leader, being a warrior on the field, you're absolutely right. He's shown that game in and game out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for the money he's on and being out of contract, of all the players that are out of contract or we have options on, I imagine the phone will be ringing the most about him because he's a relative bargain, and for all the qualities that Michael so eloquently described, he doesn't expect to start even, but he will give you 100% whenever you give him a chance. Yeah, he didn't have a great game on Saturday night, but it shouldn't boil down to that. But if we don't bring him back under a different deal, I'm sure there'll be other teams that do in the league.
Yeah. We're going to get more into player movement in the second segment. So let's run through just some of the highlights of the San Jose game first. So the first goal comes in the 17th minute. I'm just noticing that this is assisted by Jeremy Ebobisse, which I think is generous, but also like correct in a different sense. But this one comes from Austin playing out of the back. Cascante plays Valencia between lines, and it kind of seemed like the pass was a touch wide, and also Valencia like misread it and didn't quite notice that it was a touch wide and just didn't really act with enough urgency to get to it. The ball falls into loose space. He tries to get to it. Ebobisse does a good job of kind of challenging for that ball and then just like gets a foot on it. And so it's not an intentional pass, but it's just like he fights Valencia off and just touches it into space. Falls to Espinosa and just smashes it into that bottom right corner. Really, really good finish, but that's the kind of thing that like you've come to expect from Christian Espinosa.
Yes, and it ended a kind of run of games without a goal for him. He's been setting up others, but it again, self-inflicted wound. Almost at times this year we've made the contrast to season 1 in 2021. That felt like a 2021 moment, didn't it? It was just, I mean, I don't know, Michael. For me, looking on, that was Julio Cascante's fault. He played the ball a little too hard, a little too inaccurately for Valencia to be able to bring it in completely under control. And Valencia already had Ebobisse on his shoulder. Don't play him that ball.
Yeah.
But he did, and the rest unfolded.
Austin gets the equalizer in the 32nd minute. This one comes in. This is a pattern of play that I thought, going back to kind of the shape and having those two players in the midfield, I think Austin seemed to be kind of doing, we were talking off air about watching European teams, and I mentioned Brighton, but this kind of like shape and pattern that Brighton has been really good at the last couple of seasons is they'll split their center backs wide and have two central midfielders really close to each other. And Ring and Valencia were kind of playing those spots, and this pattern where they would play it in and like have some quick combination out of pressure and then be able to play forward or kind of switch play and play it on the other side. And this goal comes from a moment like that where there's some combination in the middle. They find Driussi on the right side. He drives, finds Lima wide, and there's several players moving various directions in the box. It wasn't like it was a decent cross into a decent area, but it wasn't like a super dangerous moment, but it finds Owen Wolf's head. And this is one of those goals where it's like, is this like a fortunate goal? Sure. But also, I 100% believe that it's what Owen Wolf was trying to do in the moment. Just like he saw a ball coming towards his head and he's like, okay, I'm going to flick it towards goal and see what happens. And it ends up just long looping header right inside the far post there.
Oh yeah. He knew exactly what he was doing with that header. I mean, it's funny because the cross, Michael, from Nick Lima had it had the pace on that allowed Wolf to do that. I mean, that's a different sort of cross. He can't produce that header, but he let the ball do the work. He still had to guide it perfectly, but he knew exactly what he was doing there. It was superbly executed.
Well, watching that header, I had to kind of rub my eyes because I was like, Josh Wolf 2.0. That's a goal that Josh Wolf would be proud of. Talk about the genes from father to son being passed down. Makes you think, should Owen be played and allowed to get further forward and not be really part of the buildup? Because watching him for the U20s, he was in the box quite a bit, and he had a very good U20 World Cup because he was forced to stay higher up the field and allow other players to do the buildup. I think he's a player that you allow him to press, but to see that aspect of his game, that he can head the ball, that he has the awareness to get that sort of contact on it, I want to see more of that from Owen Wolf. That was a really good goal and one of the better goals you saw on decision day.
Jeremiah, what other points did you want to hit as far as this game goes?
On this one, I managed to stay awake through the rest of it, which I was really proud of myself on.
Not many did, Jeremiah. Not many.
Yeah, no, I was struggling.
We talked about Stuver. We talked about San Jose, like being on the front foot most of the night, and also like being a little bit confused about why Austin wasn't more aggressive on that. And then I guess I just this post-game comments from Josh Wolf, which a lot of people reacted to online about what to play for, which said, it's always challenging to come to San Jose. They're obviously playing for their playoffs lives and we have nothing to play for. Like, do you guys love that attitude? Like, I did not. I mean, I'm obviously not at the level of athlete of some of the people here. I played on a lot of really bad sports teams, but I like to believe that we were going to win, no matter what, going into a match, or like we had something to play for. So I was a little taken aback by that too.
Yeah, to me, those post-game comments just kind of, it was almost like someone didn't tell them this wasn't June and it wasn't in the middle of the season. In June, those comments would be fine. Yeah, great point on the road, no problem. But final game of the season, what are we trying to lock down? 12th place? Is that what the point secures? I mean, it was mind-boggling. My favorite moment, actually, in the second half was right at the end when it was 1-1. It was obvious at that point San Jose were going to qualify because Portland were losing 3-1 at home. There was no way for them back. I think it was already in stoppage time. And San Jose get a corner deep in stoppage time. And Danielle, their keeper, wants to come up. He comes charging out of his goal, gets to halfway line, and Luchi Gonzalez waves him back, saying, no, get back. We don't need another goal. We're fine. He thought they still needed to win. So that was the moment of comic relief for me in that second half. But
I saw that and I was thinking like it would be worth Luchi taking a card on that to just like run out onto the field and like stop him and push him back and send him the other way.
Oh man, that's priceless. No, I wrestled with that a lot. And I think it's one of those moments that looking back, and sometimes you say as a coach or a player, you say things in the heat of the moment, and it's the buildup of frustration, the buildup of just a season that hasn't gone your way. But that's a moment right there that is a sum of mistakes that are summarized in a moment that I think Josh Wolf will want back, because people want something to look forward to. He's going to be the coach next year, and there's differentiating feelings on that, but he's the guy. And you want to leave your fans, you want to leave your locker room with something to look forward to. Whether you think that or not, that is a private conversation with your players or with your staff at best. That is not a public conversation. I've never heard a coach say that in the last game of the season, whether it be the very last place team. You didn't hear Colorado's coach say that. So it worries me a bit of, you still have a job to do. Are you already thinking this is a foregone conclusion of the season's done? Or do you still want to see this out in 2023 before you move on to 2024? That tells me that his mind's already on 2024. And this game is just, hey, let's blow the whistle and let's get out of here, get on the plane so we can start the process for 2024. But I never like to see that from a manager. Yeah. And I think that's a mistake on his part and something he'll want back.
Well, and Michael,
go on.
Oh, I was going to say, I'll give you guys the other side of that from 2021, which was obviously like a terrible season. But like that, I believe the last match was where we saw John Gallagher.
Yes.
At his first performance at fullback. And it was an awful year, but like we left that night going like, you know what? John Gallagher has something. And like that was in a weird way, like that was our hope for the next season. Obviously, like a lot of things went right the next season, but we had like one thing to hang our hats on. But it was like a positive performance out of like a meaningless game at the end of the year.
Couldn't agree more, Jeremiah and Landon. That's what me and Michael talked about actually on Verde Lights. It's like that provided some momentum heading into the offseason. It gave you something to hang on to. They ended on the right note. They beat a team who were in third place and heading into the playoffs. A good team. They beat them at home, and that was huge and definitely helped with the momentum heading into the offseason next season. So that's an opportunity wasted for me. They could have, especially against a team they've never beaten. Get your first ever win against San Jose, knock them out of the playoffs. That's a great incentive. I couldn't understand settling for a point. That's settling for mediocrity.
A couple of player notes that I had before we wrap this up is I had some conversations over the last couple of weeks about Leo Väisänen and how he looked like a step off the pace when he came back from injury. I thought in the San Jose game, he looked a bit more like himself, looked a little bit quicker, looked like he felt a little bit better. So that made me feel better about him going forward, and that he looked like he will be the player that we saw earlier in this season again, where there was a few games where he did not look like that guy. I thought Matt Hedges, when he came on, was solid for the however many minutes that he played. A player I thought looked quite bad for most of the game is Sebastian Driussi. I think he gave the ball over like 3 times needlessly in the first 15 minutes. And then there's a few times where he tried something like needlessly cute in a moment where something simple would have been pretty effective. And that's just been one of the biggest things this year for me, is that he just has not looked like the same player as last year.
You are correct.
For how much money? Name the price.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a theory that I have. And we talk about fan fiction on this show all the time. And this is one of my fan fiction stories, but talking about like there's a lot of reasons why this season went the way that it did, but you see this in all sports where guys are motivated on contract years, and then you see them dip sometimes after they get those contracts. It feels like Sebastian Driussi and Diego Fagundes maybe got their bags and then didn't take this offseason as seriously as maybe they did the off seasons before, and then came into the season and it showed. Do y'all think that is a reasonable and realistic theory?
Oh God, there's a lot to get into with this. Michael, do you?
Yeah.
Do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, it's hard because I'm always a player's guy. Like I think players should get rewarded for when they have a good season. I think they should be held accountable for when the sum of their performances don't go the right way. What Sebastian Driussi and Diego Fagundes did, incredible in 2022. That is why we made the playoffs. That's why we made the Western Conference championship match. It was on the offensive output of those players, and other players did the job as well. It was a team effort, but those two really shone. I think it was a combination of being handsomely rewarded for what they did and the timing of that, getting the extension on top of a new contract. That is really hard to find the new motivation. Both players came to Austin to prove a point. And Sebastian Driussi leaving Zenit, it was to come to Major League Soccer and still prove a point. He wasn't one of the highest paid players. He was still a DP, but he wasn't making Shaqiri money. He was making good money. Diego Fagundes came to Austin to prove a point. And as a player, once you lose that, what's your why of being here, playing with that chip on your shoulder, and you're rewarded for it, you have to find a new what's your why, a new why you show up. I think the injury woes that both players suffered didn't help their cause. And who you're surrounded with changes dramatically. I still don't know if making Sebastian Driussi the captain was the right choice. I think that changes his focus from being responsible for being the main man to being responsible for a losing team in a very difficult season. That wears on you. And he looked like a player who was carrying the weight of Austin on his shoulders. And once you get frustrated, once the frustration compounds, it shows on the fields. It shows in missed chances. Adrian, how many times did we do Verde Lights? And we would say, that's uncharacteristic from Sebastian Driussi. He missed from 6 yards out. That's his bread and butter, arriving and putting it away. I mean, once he gets one, he gets two. And it's almost like he's playing back in the playgrounds of Argentina. But this year, it felt like he was carrying the weight of the whole team on his shoulders because of the armband.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your question of motivation, Landon, I think there's probably something to that. I mean, it's human nature, isn't it? All of us. So if you get 3 times the money, and you're guaranteed for the next 2 or 3 years, yeah, perhaps there's something, but that's certainly not the major thing. The major thing for me is just we're not using him correctly. We're just not. How many times this season did you see him hugging a touchline out wide? I'm like, God, this guy is one of the top 2 or 3 number 10s in the league. and we don't get him involved in and around the penalty area nearly as much. And it seemed to get exacerbated the longer the season went on. The further back he seemed to drop, and
I feel like that's partially a Sebastian Driussi problem, though. I don't think anybody's telling him to do that. I think
they are. The coach is telling him to go wide. He is getting specific instructions to go wide. He absolutely is getting those instructions.
There are times in the games though where it feels like he tries, like we're down and we need something. He'll drop deep and take the ball off of Pereira or Ring's foot, and then make a terrible pass forward. And like, okay, like I understand, like you're the guy and you want to take this game over, but this is not the space to do it. Like stay further forward and let these guys who are quite good at getting the ball forward, get the ball forward to you. And so I agree with you. I think there are like some structural things that could be done to use him better, but I think he needs to be a bit more disciplined as far as like what he's doing as well.
But therein lies a question though. And I think it's being generous. I think it's actually giving credit to 2022, the guys who are quite good at getting the ball forward. I think we struggled with that this season. The structural change and the shift, Danny P at the 6, Ruben Gabrielson made it predictable for Julio Cascante. I think his presence in the back line, that's understated in how it's impacted this team. Just his presence of saying Sebastian Driussi. Last year, we got to hear this story from the team where when it got difficult, Ruben would be the guy who would say, Sebastian, stay high. Don't come back here. When you have that voice from the back saying, we will defend for you, we will get this ball to you, that gives you the world of confidence and just going upbeat to say, okay, you do your job, I'll do mine. And Ruben saying, go win us the games. We'll tee it up for you. Go win us the games. When you're looking back there and you're seeing the team struggle defensively, you're not receiving the balls, and whether that's you getting frustrated, dropping back. And I do think there's a world where both of those things are true, from the structural and the frustration, because that happens with your best player. They'll be like, you know what, screw this, I'm going to do it myself. And that can't happen. But when there isn't that calming presence and that sense of belief in the back line and in the team, then you're going to try and do it on your own. And that was to his detriment overall in the air. But I think what both of you are saying is true. But I remember that it just brings up that story that we got to hear towards the very end of the season, where Ruben was that vocal leader and that sense of calm when it got difficult, of saying, Seba, stay high. And that resulted in last minute goals. It resulted in second half comebacks. And that you need that for a winning team.
So what you're saying is we need to sign another player that Driussi is afraid of.
Man, I like that.
Sign two more. Sign two more.
But I think it hits on your point about him being feeling a responsibility of being a captain and like maybe taking on too much. And whereas like he felt like did not just responsibility for himself, which he was comfortable in last year, but like responsible for everybody. And he, and paired that with like not having a strong voice, which I am also terrified of Ruben after we interviewed him, like just even over Zoom. Like I get it. But I just feel like I agree. Like it feels like he was just trying to do too much and was like not as effective as last year because of a lot of that, along with all the other things that went on around him.
All right, guys, I think we need to take a quick break and we're going to come back and answer some listener questions. Hang tight. We'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to FVF.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FVF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. Amplify's team lives and works in the community, making them the experts on how members can achieve their financial goals.
What makes Amplify different? No bank fees. Amplify is the first financial institution in Texas to put an end to bank fees. In 2022, Americans paid almost $8 billion in overdraft fees alone. Millennials pay an average of $336 a year in bank fees, which works out to 6 Austin FC game tickets per person per year. Or I think what would have been like 3 tickets to the Soccer Assist Gala that we went to, or event that we went to last week. So you could also like have a good time and spend that too. You pay none of those bank fees with Amplify Credit Union.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower.
And we're happy to share that Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our premier sponsor, McGuire Woods Consulting. McGuire Woods Consulting helps companies and nonprofits navigate the political process at the Texas Capitol, in Austin at the city level, at the national level, wherever there are politics. There will be McGuire Woods Consulting, helping you through lobbying, communication strategies, and general advocacy.
With offices across the country and in 10 MLS cities, including Austin, Houston, and Dallas, McGuire Woods Consulting is solidly verde and black. Learn more about our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com. All right, we are back. Still with us are Adrian Healey and Michael Lahoud. We're going to answer some listener questions from our Patreon members. We're going to start off with one from Elise. She asks, I'm curious how connected Adrian and Michael still are to the team. I know we emotionally claim them as ours, but what, if anything, is official as far as the connection with Austin FC goes?
Well, I think I can speak for both of us, Michael. The official connection was still being able to work together on shows this year. Obviously, we didn't have the same level of connection as we did in years 1 and year 2, which was very special. I mean, I felt we were really kind of sort of part of the fabric in year 1 and year 2, and able to be kind of move freely in and amongst the players and the coaching staff and the facilities. And that changed a bit in year 3, but it didn't change our kind of connection to the team, Michael. I think I'm fair in saying it's still been a case of I feel like it's us when we say we did it, we're ours or we. I still feel like I can use that connective noun for Austin because it's been a big part of my life for 3 years now.
Yeah, it's one thing to be a broadcaster, and it's another thing to really feel like you're the voice of not just Verde and Black, but in the last 3 years, just being a voice for the storytelling that goes on behind the scenes. I think back to Moussa Dite and scoring the hat trick, and we go in the next day, and everyone, Moussa included, just on cloud 9. But seeing Davy Arnaud, and I'll never forget this. We were calling the game, and you pointed this out, Adrian, that Davy was the one who went to Josh and screamed at him. And I remember I was doing a replay, and Adrian goes, "Moussa's going in," and I'm like, number one, how do you do that? How do you know things when it's about to happen? Only Tony Romo knows how to do that. But here we are. Adrian Healey does that, and so Moussa goes in. The rest is history. But then hearing the backstory of why Davy did that and their special bond, their special relationship, Moussa's struggle with the English language and Davy's connection with French and being in Montreal. And Montreal is the one place where he felt at home and at peace when the team would travel. And just those things, being able to share that, I think those are the special moments that, as I look back on these last 3 years and the future, who knows what happens in the future, but that's what makes our relationship with Austin, I think, really special.
Yeah. And I think that's why, Michael was talking about Ruben. We saw firsthand in year 2 what a huge impact Ruben and Felipe had.
Yeah.
Even though Felipe didn't contribute that much on the field, both of them were massive in that locker room, just massive, and really drove that team forward. And I think we missed both of them this year.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, I was gonna say, you guys have hit a couple stories already, but the other part of this question is like, is there anything y'all want to unload on? Are there any things you guys? Is there anything you want to break or like some grievances? Like it's your open festive season here. If there's anything that you guys want to like share that you haven't already, but like that Gita story is great. I think there's a couple other things you guys have shared that we didn't know about as fans. So like we appreciate that perspective on. But like, is there anything else that comes to mind, sort of along those lines that you do want to share?
I think we may need a part 2 for this podcast. No, seriously. I mean, I know we've already been going a long time, so I don't know, Michael. What do you think? I struggle with this because in any organization, there's going to be things that rub you the wrong way, and a professional soccer team's no different. But I don't know. I don't know if I particularly want to unload in this forum.
That's fair. That's fair. Don't come to my office and ask me about like Texas Mutual either, because I will also not unload. All right. That's good. That's a good point.
No, I will add this. I will say that it's seasons like 2021 and the frustrations of this season that really illuminate how special last year was. And I remember at the end of last season, I remember we were packing up right before the playoffs, and I remember Adrian said this to us. He said, "Hey, enjoy it, guys. Winning seasons are always better than losing ones," and that's obvious. But from our standpoint and being able to talk about the team, and we are all involved in soccer media, look at from social media. I remember going through and just from Landon to everyone seeing the tweets of jubilation and how quickly you expect it to build just because you got to the Western Conference Championship, just because you finished second in the West, of like, okay, CONCACAF Champions League, we're going from strength to strength. Don't take those winning seasons for granted. And it really paints 2022 and like, okay, that was a gem of an experience. And hopefully we have more of that with Austin FC. But for all of us to be a part of the storytelling, that was unique.
Yeah. I'll give you one little thing that I wish they would have done differently last year, even in a great year in 2022. Jared Stroud. I felt really bad for Jared Stroud because I felt he was treated pretty awfully and was just kind of frozen out and not even kind of acknowledged. And it's actually really been heartwarming to see how he's done this year, and he's found a home on a really successful team and has done really well. So that to me is kind of a story on a personal level that wasn't so good while it was happening, but it's great to see the outcome.
All right, next question comes from Kevin Trahan, and he says, besides getting better players, what can Wolf do to fix the defense? I ask this because the defense was still bad when he had healthy center backs he clearly liked in 2022. And because it seems like we're sticking with Cascante no matter how many mistakes he makes. So I want to give my quick answer on this one and then throw it to Michael here. So I feel like a lot of blame, and sometimes rightly so, gets aimed at the center backs. But I think like in an ideal scenario, your center backs won't be in situations where they're defending on the back foot in transition with no coverage in front of them. Like you like ideally, if they are in that situation, you would want to have faith that they're going to win some of those battles. I don't have much faith in those situations right now, but you also would like hope that your center backs wouldn't be in that situation all the time. One of the things that I've noticed is just like in Austin's like rest defense, like in their structure as they're attacking, it seems like anytime we give the ball over as we're in the attacking third, that we are toast. Like there's the center backs are slow or not center backs or whatever, but also it seems like our midfield was never in the right spot to even slow anything down in those moments. Michael, as someone who played in the midfield, how do you improve that? Is it just like a focus and mentality thing? Like how do you get better in those situations as far as like defending and transition and knowing when you can go a bit further forward and when you need to sit back a little?
I think it's twofold. From looking at the two center backs this year, there was more of a focus on playing out of the back. And I know in the media and in press conferences, Josh and the staff had talked about, no, we want to protect the back four more. And that's why we saw an extra defender in there, and it looked like a back three at times. And oftentimes when we were playing and putting John Gallagher up as that winger. But the difference between the 2 years was we had more protection and more just of a defensive safeguard in the midfield. And there's one player that wasn't a part of the midfield for most of the season. Alexander Ring had more of a defensive midfield presence. Yeah. And when we went on our run, Alex Ring was playing as a defensive midfield. Ruben Gabrielson was behind him. So Ruben Gabrielson is a very different player than Julio Cascante. And I know Leo Väisänen is a good ball-playing center back, but those are the gambles that you take when you put so much emphasis on we're going to have two ball-playing center backs. You don't need two. You have one. And you have another one that if you go on the market, please get some speed, man. Get some speed. Other teams seem to get speed. There's fast center backs in this league. Make that a priority. It's not rocket science. Get speed and commit to one ball-playing center back. If that's Julio, then that's your guy. If you're going to play a back three, then you have two ball-playing center backs in Julio and Leo. and you got a guy who can run for days. But we need speed, and we need a true defensive midfielder whose sole job is to break up plays and intercept. You get those two things, the goals we're giving up change overnight.
Yeah, I guess it kind of goes back to what you were saying before, is that, yeah, it's like having personnel in the right spots, where Dani Pereira as a lone six, like, it's almost like, of course he's going to be out of position, because that's what he's good at, is carrying the ball out of that position. And so,
yeah.
And so, yeah, I like you, because like I was saying before, like, I think the center backs get put in bad situations by the rest of the team. They're not well equipped to deal with those situations, and that's part of the problem as well. But yeah, like I think you're right, that like having someone who is like a proper defensive midfielder to kind of slow down those moments. Like, I'm not asking for Diego Chara, but somebody a little bit closer to that, who can close down some of those spaces. And you're right, like having Alex Ring not in the midfield, and he was playing a bit further forward most of last season, but he was still in that area and could be one of the guys to track back and kind of break up some of those moments.
Let's go to this Tom Hallett question, because this is one of the interesting ones. Well, the first statement's not really a question. Please give all of our love to Michael and Adrian. So we'll start with that. We'll start with the statement part of it. I just think it comes from everybody. And really just like the offseason. So Tom projects 13 players turned over, which seems like a lot to me. Like
13?
Wow. What do y'all see in terms of like offseason turnover, knowing that I guess we got this announcement that we'll probably start seeing names maybe the next few days, maybe even this week, probably, usually knowing our history, like tomorrow after we've recorded, they'll announce all the players out of contract.
But I guess first question, does 13 sound high? Because to me, that sounds high.
That seems really high to me too. Yeah. First team for sure.
I would answer that question, first of all, by looking across the state at the Houston Dynamo. How many new players did they sign last season? As well as getting a new coach, I should add. 16. They signed 16 new players, and it's worked out pretty well for them. So Rodolfo's kind of set the expectations pretty low, isn't he, in his press conferences, which I wasn't sure about doing. But he's like, "Oh, is this going to take several windows?" And it might, but you're not restricted to just doing 2 or 3 moves per window. You can do a big time shakeup if you make the right moves and make the right maneuvering within the salary cap limitations. All right, it can be done. Houston have shown it can be done. They had a lot of high playing players on their squad at the end of last year who weren't performing, that they got rid of. You can find a way to do it. So I would say, I don't know what the number's going to be, but it's going to be significant.
Yeah, I mean, when you start thinking about, so it's got to be more than 2 or 3, just based on the number of contracts that are up, right? And so, yeah, I was thinking more in the range of like 7 to 10, and maybe they leave a few open for the summer window. But I mean, Tom might not be too far off when you start thinking about like Alfonso Ocampo Chavez, Charlie Asensio, some of these guys who are technically on first team contracts and are probably expiring this year. Like, maybe you swap in some of the other guys, and that's going to be one of our other questions. We'll get to that in a second, but maybe it is closer to 13, and like, that's out of necessity to an extent. Like, you're going to have to sign at least 5 or 6 new ones just from the guys who are almost certainly leaving. And then, I mean, I'll ask you this, Adrian, what would be your position of priority if you're going to bring in, like, target one big signing? What position would that be?
Center forward. We've never had the number 9 that we need. Never in our 3 years of our club history. We came close to having it with Moussa Djite. He's as close as we got, quite frankly.
And Moussa played like 3 good games, really.
Right. Well, he was young and he was a project, and there were all sorts of other things going on with him. But that's the style of center forward that this game model requires. Michael, your good friend Special K. Obviously, we're not talking about him now, but this whole game model, which is based on the Berhalter Columbus game model, requires a Kai Kamara-esque in his prime center forward. That's what it's all built around. If you're going to send in 58 crosses a game, you need a Special K to get on the end of it. We've never had that, and I can't believe it hasn't been more of a priority.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. And as soon as you said that, there's a guy who came to mind immediately He's backing up a center forward who's my vote for MLS Comeback Player of the Year. He scored against Austin. William Agata.
Yeah.
Get him. Austin's got to get him. Go after him.
I like that player
the
a
sort
lot.
of player where he can hold the ball up, he can create his own chances, and he's dying for minutes.
He knows
he's not going to get
can
minutes.
Stretch a line too.
Yeah, he's got pace to get him behind. And Sebastian Driussi, when we talked to him last year and Musa started getting hot, he said, I love playing with Musa because Musa runs and stretches the line. And he goes, all I know I have to do is just run with him, and the ball's going to fall to me. We need that sort of player. You want to get Seba going? Get a player who can stretch the line. Get a player who has the mobility to hold up the ball, create space for Seba. You'll see Seba come alive.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And there's going to be space for it, right? I know Zardes is guaranteed for a couple more years, but Bruin is out of contract. Urruti's out of contract. There's a significant amount of salary space there and the roster spots to bring in someone else in that spot. And then you could even say, like, spend that extra money on that. And if Rigoni is still around, then he's that third option maybe as the number 9. And so, yeah, I like that move. I mean, Wolf mentioned specifically in the press conference the other day, more competition across the back line. I think he said on the fullback and center back.
He said, yeah, fullback, center back, and on the wings, and did not mention the forwards for some reason, but I feel like that's a given.
Yeah, but I said this a few shows back that as far as like guys we think can move out, there's not going to be a great market for a lot of the players on the current team. That doesn't mean you can't move them. It just means it's going to be tough to move multiple of them. I think of the players who are movable that I think we could be aggressive and kind of upgrade on is Nick Lima's spot. Nick Lima is a guy he's a perfectly fine player. I thought he played decent against San Jose the other night. But as far as like how we want to play in this system, I think you could either get talking about that fast center back, like maybe trade him out and bring in someone in that spot and play that back 3 and bring in some more speed there, or bring in a more chance creating fullback. So like looking more towards like the Kai Wagner mold, where it's like a real chance creator, because Lima is kind of like in between. I see him as like 6s across the board. He's like decent at all of it. And so that's a spot as far as like trades to look for. But looking at center back, as many center backs as we have guaranteed and with the salaries they're on, I calculated just for those like first 3 guys, it's like $2.25 million wrapped up in just those 3 guys' salaries. Can they justify bringing in someone else on decent salary without shipping one of those guys out somehow?
I don't think. I mean, I'll broaden this to the whole squad. I don't think there are many untouchables at all on this squad.
But can you move them? Is there anywhere to move them?
It's a different question. But but are they completely untouchable? No, I think you can count them on one hand. The players that are untouchable. I don't know if you can. If there is genuinely a market for Leo Väisänen, I would think not, because he's an international and he's only going to be at the start of his second year. I expect Väisänen to get better next year. I don't know about the Matt Hedges situation. Not too sure about that signing. Great player in his day, but 33 now and on a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, there are questions all over the field. There really are. And again, I think we'd need a part 2 to really delve into it. But yeah, it just depends. I mean, Rodolfo Borrell is going to have his hands mighty, mighty, mighty full, because I expect a lot of ins and outs, and I expect the untouchables to be very few.
Talking about one specific spot that I think we've talked a lot about expecting to be free next year, or in an ideal scenario coming back for lesser money. I think the kind of show that we do and the type of media that we are, like, we're not pretending to be Tom Bogert or Fab Romano out here, but we're not breaking transfer news, but we have little birdies tell us things every once in a while. And if we're talking about the 3 most likely scenarios for Alex Ring, being his option being picked up and staying, his option being picked up and getting sold, or him leaving as a free agent. I'm not so sure which is most likely at this point.
I'll take number 3, please. It's
that's what I would take too. I'm just saying,
yeah.
I'm not so sure now.
Yeah, it's been a turbulent 2023 for Alex Ring. As a player, there's so many factors, especially when you are in a year where you're now a free agent. And that's one of the new mechanisms in Major League Soccer since COVID. A lot more player power when it comes to free agency. And when you're Alex Ring and you take a step back and you just look at all the pieces, you start with the first blow. The captain's armband was taken away from you. That's a big decision. Number one, that says your manager no longer trusts you to lead this team, even though you were the captain, and there are a lot of leaders, but you were the captain in a year where your team made the Western Conference Championship. And then you, because of personnel and because of we're going to go younger in the midfield, you get told that you are backing up 2 young midfielders. That's another blow. And then because of injuries, and partly because you earn it to be in there, you now find yourself as the guy to start. It's going to take a lot of convincing, and trust needs to be repaired. When those things happen, trust breaks down between player, coach, and staff and club. How can I trust you again that I'm not going to experience this same thing? Because now all of a sudden you need me. At the start of the season, you told me you didn't need me as a leader. You told me you didn't need me as a starting midfielder. That's why it makes me hard to see him coming back. Here's a guy who's used to starting since he walked into the field in Major League Soccer, and there's uncertainty for the first time in his career. And he doesn't strike me as a guy who wants to see it out. He wants to be the guy. He wants to have a voice. He wants to be the main guy in midfield.
Yeah, I'm intrigued, Landon, why you think he'll be back, and on the same money. To me, he's the first one out the door, first one. So especially at the money he's on, and as a DP, you're kidding me? That's a no-brainer. But I'm intrigued that you have an opposite point of view.
So
maybe there's some. Go on.
He is currently on max TAM, and so there is a scenario where if you keep GT out on loan long enough, if Rodney Redes' contract is up, we don't know about that either, that would leave Jean Kolmanich as the only U22 player. Then in that scenario, you could buy down Ring and get another full DP. And so he wouldn't necessarily have to be a DP anymore. But if they pick up that option, if that option is exercised, then he would be still a max TAM player.
Yeah. But I have to think they're not going to pick up that option. I mean, why would you? You know?
Yeah.
Unless it's for significantly less. Significantly. I mean, you can't use that much money on a player like him who's been in the league as long as he has. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
I agree.
Okay, so we're going to run out of time here, like soon, but I'm going to get a bunch of questions. I'm going to ask y'all one dumb one because I love it. And think we can probably bundle together a couple of smart ones. So let's start with a dumb one from our favorite listener, ATX Bergkamp Lover 6969420, who wants to know, if you're to become a WWE style professional wrestler, what would your name and persona be? And would Adrian and Michael be a tag team? I know you guys watch wrestling, so like just like, what's your favorite? I do. I like, since I was a child, I did. So like, I feel like this is the question I was like ready to answer.
Oh my God. I used to watch this is really going to frighten you. I used to watch English wrestling in the late 70s. I didn't have any choice because they put it on Saturday afternoon TV just before the results came on, and there used to be a wrestler called Giant Haystack. So it was just like,
I know that guy. Yeah.
So he's my idol when it comes to wrestling. I don't know if Michael and I can come up with a tag team on the spot for you. What would we be? I don't know.
Did you follow wrestling, or do you follow wrestling, Michael?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, do I ever? Yeah, I actually went to a WWE event in San Antonio this year with Adrian knows and my good buddy Steve Newman, and just brought back a lot of memories. My idol was the Rattlesnake, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Questionable choice of beer unless Budweiser wants to sponsor the pod, but I love it. But if you change the beer out and give me some Lone Star instead of Budweiser, that's my guy.
Jeremiah, did you come up with a persona, Jeremiah?
Well, two things. First of all, you're obviously Mr. H and Mr. L, and I don't know what personas you guys have, but you should be a tag team because we've already learned this. And second of all, I'm also a Stone Cold Steve Austin guy, and so he played football at the University of North Texas, and I once, like, back in the day when documents were traded on paper, like I called the sports information department and told them I was writing a book about Stone Cold Steve Austin and needed every record they had about him. And they sent me like the media guides from the 80s when he was playing football there. And like, and then they called me and they're like, how's the book going? I'm like, it's great. It's great. Sorry, I lied about everything, but yeah. So I've got like a lot of like deep background on Stone Cold from Victoria. Awesome. So I love it.
That's awesome.
I felt bad because I usually don't put in the legwork on ATX Bergkamp lovers questions, but I went for it this one. So there's like a lot of like absurd like joke gimmicks throughout the span of the history of wrestling, and so I'd definitely be one of those. So I didn't actually have to fight that much, and just be more like comic relief. But I decided my name would be Hot Dog, and I would use motifs and imagery of both like dogs the animal and hot dogs the food, like kind of interchangeably, and then would throw in some of the weird like subversive elements of like gold dust, and just be like a very strange wrestling character.
Hey, there's a few of them, a long list of them. So
yeah, I think that fits you, man. The next thing I was going to ask,
entrance music is Atomic Dog by George Clinton.
Oh my God, I didn't get that far.
Nice.
I was going to go to this Martin Peterson question, which is like Austin FC 2 players who you think will be on the first team next year. Do y'all have like a list, or is there anybody in particular that y'all want to see? Landon,
I want to answer this one. I have a list here. Where's my list? Well, I lost my list, but I know it on my head. So as far as like the guys who I think just seem most ready, I think it's a pretty short list. I think David Rodriguez, Valentin Noel are the two like clear offensive options that I think could probably step in and do a decent role player job in the team now. The other guys, I know for these are guys I wasn't quite sure about, but I know that these two that I'm about to mention have trained with the first team fairly extensively, and that's Joe Hafferty and Jack Torre. And so Joe Hafferty, like I don't know exactly what position he would be good at. He's quite small to play center back. Maybe he could play fullback and like slot into that Nick Lima flex center back attacking fullback role. And then Jack Torre is like, I mean, I say this on the show quite regularly, but early in the season, I was like, this guy's not really a fullback. And he wasn't. He was a winger his whole life. And I swear he heard me say that and was like, I'm going to prove this guy wrong. And he's like pretty decent defensively now. And so, and then just like sauce for days on the ball. And so I think he would be a fun addition to play, maybe that like all gas, no brakes wing back with three center backs behind him or something. I think something that somebody reminded me of today is that David Rodriguez is on a loan. And so that complicates that a little bit. Then you're paying a transfer fee for a guy who's probably on a supplemental roster spot. And do you want to waste GAM or whatever it's going to cost to actually bring him in full time? That's complicated. Val Noel would count as an international. I think with some of the guys we think are probably leaving, we would probably have the international spot for him, but maybe they want to save those for other people. So I think those are the four guys. And then, I mean, you say CJ Fodre already has the contract, but I think like Charlie Asensio, I wouldn't be surprised if he loses his first team contract and either leaves or signs on a second team contract. And then same for AOC. Like I don't see either of those guys keeping their first team status.
And are we assuming Damian Lass is in that mix too?
I think that's the biggest question, right? I mean, he's probably too good to keep playing Next Pro. we already have a really good keeper for pretty cheap on the first team. And so it feels like a waste to sit Damian Loss on the bench for the first team. So, I mean, do you do the unthinkable and move Stuver and push Loss into that first spot? Or do you maybe try to move Loss while you still have him under contract? I think that's the toughest call as far as things regarding this second team, because you want a young keeper to play. But he's quite clearly our second best goalkeeper now. So do y'all have thoughts on that?
Yeah. Oh, I think he's confident and he's ready, and he would be up for the task of actually challenging for that number one spot. I think it would take an awful lot to dislodge Stuver, but that's what you want in your first team.
Yeah, you want to be pushed, right?
Yeah. No, I love that we're having this conversation, because I 100% agree that he's too good to be playing Next Pro. And what happens when a goalkeeper proves his worth is other teams take notice. Austin fans weren't the only ones watching that MLS Next Pro final. So if you're Damian Loss, you're in a very good position, because for Austin FC, you got to get him games. And Brad Stuver is our number one, but you don't have to play Brad Stuver for Open Cup games.
Yeah,
That's a conversation between coach and goalkeepers. Those are where if you have a good backup goalkeeper, you got to give him the games. You can't just let him sit there, or else if I'm Damian Loss, I hate to say this, I'm picking up the phone and, hey, you got to go where you're wanted. You got to go where you're going to get minutes. He's ready for it, and I hope it's with Austin.
Do y'all think that, let's say Damian Loss stays on, plays Open Cup, maybe we've been lucky with Stuver injuries as well. He played every minute this season. And so let's say that doesn't happen next year. He has to sit out for a few games. If Damian Loss gets 5 to 10 games under his belt next year, is that worth having him on the first team? Or do you think it would still be more valuable to have him loaned out to a USL squad or something like that?
No, absolutely. He would probably take that right now. If you were guaranteeing him 5 to 10 games in different competitions, I would say it's time. It is time for him to make that move into a first team squad, and it's got to be ours, surely. I mean, it's the perfect setup for him to have someone like Brad ahead of him. Because as you say, how many times have you seen it, Michael, in this league, when established number ones have got injured or something's happened and they've had a drop in form, someone else has stepped in and they haven't looked back? Dane Sinclair springs to mind. He was out on the bench for so long in Minnesota, didn't look like he was ever going to look, and suddenly he was there. Yeah. The next thing you know, he's going to a World Cup, Yeah.
Well, another goalkeeper, I played with the guy, Andre Blake.
Yeah.
Andre Blake, his first 2 years, was pinned to the bench. We had to beg Jim Curtin and say, Jim, this kid's good. What are you doing? You got to give him minutes or else he's going to be out of here. And through injury, through concussion to John McCarthy, who talk about coming full circle in MLS Cup last year, but through injury and concussion, that's the only way that Andre got minutes, did it through the Open Cup, and the rest is history. And Jamaica's happy with it, and Philadelphia certainly are happy with it. So having two quality goalkeepers is there's so many teams in Major League Soccer that wish they had that problem. But you got to give the one who's backing up, you got to reward the fact that they're pushing that starting position, the fact that they're ready to get some minutes. You got to throw them a bone. You got to give them a game.
Yeah. And I think we kind of think of players on a certain timeline. And I think it's good to remind ourselves that goalkeepers are on a slightly different timeline from the outfield players, right? 21 years old is still quite young for a goalkeeper. And so if he's the backup and gets 5 to 10 games next year, that's not a waste of his development necessarily, kind of like what Adrian was saying. So yeah, I think that's important to remember as well. Michael, I wanted to get you to maybe back up an opinion that I've seen some people challenging online over the last couple of days. You're a guy who you spent your career in between USL and MLS. I've seen a lot of people saying okay, this Austin FC 2 team is so good. There has to be a bunch of guys on this team who could just step right into the first team and help us. I'm of the opinion that there's maybe a handful who could slot in and do a serviceable job. But at that level, not many players are going to be able to step straight into MLS and like really make a difference. Do you agree with that, or do you think I'm underestimating these guys?
No, I think you're spot on. It doesn't take away the shine of what these players have earned, and
No, absolutely not.
The character that this group has shown to come back to get goals late in games, and they did it in the final. There's one guy that comes to mind, and Damian last we talked about him, but I'm scratching my head at why Valentin Noel didn't get more minutes. And I'm going to say
he's not on a first team contract, so he can't.
Well, why did he not get a first team contract?
I don't think we don't have a roster spot.
there's something we could have done about that, and I'm going to bring up a name that we've all been scratching our heads about. Rodney,
I know where you're going. Yeah,
Redes.
First time we mentioned him tonight. I can't believe it took an hour and a half. But
Rodney Redes. You've lost confidence in Rodney Redes. When was the last time he played?
No, I nobody's going to argue with you, but like you have to find a place to send him, right? And so,
there's plenty of play. There's a team down the street actually that I can call tomorrow. They might be a little bit lower weight. No, I'm just being facetious, but those are the decisions. And I get you sign players to contracts, but when a season hasn't gone your way, if it's truly about winning, if it's truly about turning things around and not letting a season go by the wayside, you have a young player who is ready to give minutes. I'm not saying he's ready to just walk in and start overnight, but he's ready for the first team. He's ready for a first team. And just like with Damian last, if Austin FC aren't going to reward him with a first team contract after this season, someone will. We've seen it with Jared Stroud. I'd hate for that to happen again with a player like Val Noel.
Yeah, I was looking through just kind of the records of like how many players can we expect to kind of make that jump, and looking back at last year's Columbus Crew 2, who won the Next Pro final. I think there was like one main player, Jason Russell Rowe, who made the step up. He scored like 21 goals in Next Pro last year, though. He was like a next level player at that level. I think they had 4 or 5 other guys who spent most of their time down last year and played most of their time up this year. But I think all of those guys were on first team contracts already. So to your point, I would like to see that get corrected a little bit this year, where we can have some younger guys on those supplemental roster spots that maybe even if they do spend most of their time down playing with ATXII, that they have the ability to play up, because like we weren't going to play Charlie Asensio or Alfonso Campo Chavez on the first team. Like our best players were not on the first team contracts, and that needs to be remedied, right? Like we need to have the best players at that level to have the ability to play up whenever we need them to. And we just couldn't do it this year, but yeah, hopefully that gets fixed in this off season. Jeremiah, what else? We're kind of running out of time here.
Yeah,
any other questions we need to hit?
I think the question we just have is like, I feel like a little bit like with maybe possibly at the end of an era here with you guys. And so I would say, like, what final thoughts do you have overall? I mean, I think we're never going to talk to y'all again, but like this, y'all as a team, but in like generally like overall, for this club and going forward, and like anything, just want to say to like listeners of the show, maybe this separately, like, what do you want to see from this club going forward? What do you want to say to people who listen to Moon Tower Soccer about sort of your experience over the last 3 years?
I will start with this thought. I want the fans of this club to be rewarded for the part they've played in what has been an amazing 3 years. Michael and I were continuously kind of counting our lucky side. I mean, we kind of knew it was going to be special, Michael, didn't we? We just knew it before a ball was kicked. We just knew this was going to be a special city and a really special fan base. And I think the reality of that far exceeded it. And it's just the frustrations we have with some elements of on-field and off-field really come to bear on our feelings of this fan base deserves more. We always feel like they deserve more. So I just, I would say to fans out there, just keep the faith, keep supporting the team, but don't be afraid to kind of be vocal and put pressure on when you think things aren't being done right on or off the field. I mean, I think that's an important part of being a fan, is you never stop supporting, but you never stop being critical either. And I would just love to see this club just blossom. We've seen what's possible. We've seen what's possible in 2022, that magical year, and it's been a really, really amazing 3 years. I think Michael and I will say whatever we have done and may still do, it will be time that we never ever forget, and we'll always talk about.
Yeah, that's really well said. I'm so glad you mentioned just that phrase, use your voice. One of the things I've come to respect about Austin and really Austin FC fans is the power of using your voice. I remember things like Juneteenth, and that was a special moment in 2021, being able to be a part of that. The first ever game, home game in club history on Juneteenth. And then just some of the really heartbreaking things, the shooting in Uvalde, and how Austin FC fans were the ones, not Major League Soccer, but Austin FC fans were the united voice to really mourn what happened and say, hey, this has to stop. And just as much as fans have used their voice to voice things like that, you guys deserve so much. Adrian and I, you and I are fans. How many times do we say, oh, I was doing this for work, and turned on the game and had the Austin game, and we mourn with you when we don't get a result. We're elated. Yeah. I've got enough margarita glasses at home to testify to that. I'm not going to say how many, because that would be a problem. But so I echo that. And looking back on just these 3 years, what an honor it's been to really get to know this city, to get to know. It's one thing to hear Austin is a soccer city, but to live it alongside everyone, the two of you with Adrian, we've made such amazing friends through this experience, and ones that will be long lasting. And in a weird way, with the new form with Apple TV, it puts more onus and power on forums like this to speak the voice of truth. And it's opened up where authentic voices in the game, this is what the rest of the world has. And so I just want to encourage Moon Tower, keep it going, because this vehicle, this platform, it is so important to just creating an authentic experience for Austin FC and soccer in this country as we build the 2026. Like, that's the great launching pad. You need things like this to really give it credence and value.
Yeah. Michael, you mentioned the community that's been built around this team, and Jeremiah and I say all the time that that's been the best part of this whole journey, and we're honored to have both of you as part of that community. I know that your professional careers may take you further from us at one point in the future, but we're very honored to have gotten to work with you some, and to have you as part of that community that's been so special to all of us.
Well, I can say for me personally, whatever I have done in my career and whatever I may still do, there's never been a higher adrenaline level I've had for anything I've ever done than standing in front of those fans and doing the heartbeat of Austin before
that's awesome.
Well, everything about that night was magical. That was the LAFC home game last year, which was an ESPN game. So Michael and I were off. We were able to do the heartbeat, and my goodness, I was told I was beating that drum as if my life depended on it. I didn't realize how hard I was beating it. But
I've seen very few do it with as much enthusiasm, Adrian.
Well, I will definitely be tight-lipped on the inspiration for that. That is a Moon Tower pod after dark for why, but no, I agree with you.
All right, well, guys, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to talking to you again, hopefully in the near future. But y'all have a good night, and thanks so much.
Great stuff, guys.
All right,
keep up the great work. See ya.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Covert Ford. The Coverts have been meeting the needs of local car buyers for 114 years because of their service, financial expertise, and support after the sale.
In addition to supporting car buyers, Covert's an important part of the soccer community and the official automotive partner of Austin FC.
We want to tell you this week about a deal on a 2023 Ford F-150 Super Crew XLT, stock number 2230514. There's an MSRP of $69,400, but with a manufacturer's rebate of $2250 and dealer discount of $10,157, you can lease this truck for $389 a month for 36 months, which gives you $7,500 miles per year, with $6,000 due at signing. You can visit covertford.com or see the dealer for details.
If you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, be sure to check out covertford.com.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The good folks at Sage Wilson, I don't know if you got this, but we got invited to a pumpkin patch this past Saturday, but we were out of town, so we weren't able to make it, but it looked like that was probably a good amount of delightful family fun for Sage Wilson Realty clients and partners. So if you want somebody that's going to help you sell your house, but also do a little bit more after the sale, be sure to check out Sage Wilson Realty.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. You can find them online at sagewilson.com. All right, we want to thank Adrian Healey and Michael Lahoud for joining us. It's great to hear both of their voices at the same time again, because we haven't gotten to do that in a while, but also thankful to them for giving so much of their time to us. And we also want to thank our Patreon members for sending in those questions. We didn't get to all of them. Jeremiah, I think we can probably keep some of those in our pocket for the next couple of weeks and use some of them then, but apologies to those of you whose questions we didn't get to. We're going to go quickly, since this has been kind of a long show already, we're going to go quickly through the MLS Next Pro final, where Austin FC 2 beat the Columbus Crew 3-1. So, this is a huge deal, right? Austin FC 2, their first year of existence, having such a big year, being able to go 4 road playoff games in a row to get to the final and win it. I did not expect this to happen this year.
No, and it was a little bit of an up and down season too. I think we've talked about this. Early Austin FC 2 started out really strong and then sort of faded a little bit in the middle, and then probably through bringing some players back, really, in the playoffs, came through in an interesting way. And you talked about it, came through and winning on the road. And I was reminded, last year, 6 weeks before the season started, this team had 5 players, and everybody was worried about, was the roster build too slow, and was it even going to be competitive? And obviously everything turned out fine. So congratulations to everybody that was involved in that roster build. And I guess the other thing was there's a little bit of back and forth online sniping between the Columbus fans, the Austin fans, which gave me a little, recollection of 2017, which is either great or traumatic, depending upon how much you like arguing on the internet. Did that take you back to the old days a little bit? Did you think about it at all? Or were you just this is just another second team final and it doesn't matter?
I missed all of this online. I didn't see any of this that you're talking about, but it doesn't surprise me. I think those days kind of thickened my skin a little bit and taught me the ways of social media arguing, in that mostly you should just not. And that things that you think are very important and that are worth fighting over are in actuality things that only 10 people even saw.
Yeah, because this is what, we're 6 years down the road now from this, the original Anthony Precourt might move the team to Austin take. Yeah. And obviously neither of the second teams or anybody associated with the second teams had anything literally at all to do with this.
Well, to that, most of the nobody save a handful of people had anything to do with it, really. Right. But I'm guessing all of the players on both teams have no clue about any of that.
Some of them were 12 years old when this all went on. So let's talk about the game a little bit, because I got worried in the second half when Columbus did score the first goal on a penalty, because Austin has not shown a lot of goal scoring prowess. And so I was very happy to be surprised by the comeback and the outcome. So let's maybe talk about the first goal. I thought it was kind of soft, but maybe. Yeah.
Let's come back to that. So I think the first half, Columbus was controlling most of the game. That's a good team. They're a really solid team. You can see why they won the whole thing last year. Really clear way of playing, really dangerous, and it showed it. And Austin, I think Austin did a good job of just doing enough to stay in the game. And then Damian Loss as well comes up with 3 or 4 pretty big saves throughout the course of the game, several of those being in the first half. So Yeah, like as you said, right after halftime, first goal comes from a penalty kick. Austin FC kind of they keep fighting after that, and they don't give up in that moment. And I think that's been just this team over the whole season has kind of been able to do that. They haven't always been able to get the results, but they've been able to fight and kind of stay in games more times than not. And they did that. They kind of picked up pace a little bit. In the 70th minute, they equalize also on a penalty. Then that's when like I think the tide kind of shifts a little bit there. And CJ Fodre comes on in the second half. I know in the Colorado game, CJ comes on and isn't really able to affect the game that much. In this one, he does, especially later on as the game goes on. He impacts it pretty greatly. And so in the 77th minute, Val Noel scores the second one. And this is in transition. They kind of have Columbus on their heels. Noel finds Fodre out wide left, and he kind of continues to push that back line deeper and deeper. He hesitates a little bit, waiting for Noel to kind of open up into some space at the top of the box, cuts it back to him. Noel takes one touch, turns, and hits it top corner. And in that moment, like Noel's just one of those players, just like super technical, super classy with the ball. Like you would bet on him to finish that one 9 times out of 10, and he did it. He just hits it perfect. And then
he did. And look, was he already like playing with a bloody face at this point? Or
yeah, a really physical game. And I think he had a bloody face. Joe Hafferty's nose was bleeding, and that all happens in like the first 15 or 20 minutes, I think. But yeah, again, just like showing the fight for them to just like be able to play this physical game and still kind of stay in it and hang on while Columbus was kind of battering them for a little bit. The third goal comes in the 80th minute. This is a good little, I think it's Asensio who kind of splits a couple of players to find Noel in the midfield. He turns and finds Fodre in space behind because of kind of that little combination that opens up some space in behind there. And Fodre is running in space behind the back line. He slow plays it, kind of waiting for support on the backside, and then just hammers like a low left-footed cross into that corridor of uncertainty, kind of like that space between the keeper and the back line of defenders. And one of their defenders slides in as Sebastian Pinot is also sliding in on that backside. It's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like if he doesn't slide, Pinot's there to tap it in, but because he slid, he kind of just carries the ball into the goal with him. And so just really good play by Austin by putting them in that difficult situation and then kind of just creating a difficult moment. And even though it was Columbus that ends up scoring the own goal, like very much created by Austin's play.
Yeah, it was. I didn't even notice in the original broadcast that was an own goal, and it was like super clear on the backside. So it was like a really aggressive, strong. What was that? Those goals came like within 10 minutes or something. Like it was a great burst there, and it was good to see Austin sort of not let this one go to PKs and see what happened.
Let's go back to those penalty kicks. You mentioned that you thought one of them was soft. I thought both of them were quite soft.
I'm sorry. I was about to say this. I thought both of them were quite soft. I feel like on the broadcast, the talk was about the second one being the Austin one was soft and less about the first one. But I feel like they were both. I could have gone with neither of those PKs going against the team that got them. And I guess in the interest of justice, that was good that like both teams got crappy penalty kick.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It feels like there's justice in it, right? Like the first one, the attacking player steps on Touré's foot and then falls over. And Touré looks perplexed as to how they called a foul on him whenever his foot got stepped on. But no VAR in MLS Next Pro, so the call on the field has to stay. And then on the one that was given to us, Valentino Noel finds himself in the box. And he's in traffic, has control of the ball, but he kind of realizes he's running into a dead end. And I think like he's like, I've got guys on my heels. I'm just gonna go down. As I'm running, I'm gonna lift up one of my legs and never put it back down. And then he's just like, somebody kind of touched him. I think there was a hand on the small of his back, but it was more so just like, I'm just gonna stop running and just let momentum do the rest. And they give the call, and then Alonso Ramirez, who's been the primary penalty taker for this group all year, just ice cold penalty take. He does one of those slow run ups, just eyes on the keeper the whole way. And he's like, I'm not doing anything until you make a decision, and just waits for the keeper to dive one way, slowly slots it into the other side. Just super cool penalty take there.
Yeah, if I remember right, I think he was 5 for 5 going into that. So now he's now 6 for 6. So he's got a really strong percentage on converting those kicks. Yeah, I love seeing him do that. And so yeah, Austin takes a 3-1 win. Got to see Pollo celebrate with a bunch of players for the trophy after the match. A fair amount of fans like meeting him at the airport today when they flew back in. So it was really good to see them do that. I wrote this in the notes. Damian Loss on top of his game and smoldering. So it's very good. Like, my wife does not watch a lot of Austin FC2 games. And she's like, I mean, he's first like, this guy's handsome. She's like, I don't know. And then like the second time she saw him, she's like, oh wait, yes, he's very, very handsome. Yeah.
I was watching the game at
No doubt.
Hop Squad, and there's like a shot as he was, I don't know, waiting to take a goal kick or something. He's like just like a wide shot of him, like from like a low angle or something. And I heard somebody back behind me say, Damian's beautiful.
You're like, yes, he is.
But yeah, Val Noel gets named player of the tournament. Well deserved for, I think, just the play in this game. Super influential. And I know Fodre was involved in those last couple of goals, but none of them happened without Noel's play. And he was very, very well deserving of this. And just like really, really impressed with, I haven't heard him speak that much, and just hearing him speak after the game, just like the clear-headedness and kind of maturity that he showed in that. Like, seems to be, it seems like it's very clear, like there's a reason why he was one of the leaders on this team and why people kind of look to him for that leadership. Yeah, the celebrations afterward were great, the little trophy lifts and everything. But yeah, so much fun. Kudos to Brett Utley, to all the coaching staff, to all these players. Like, it just really well deserved for a great season to see them get rewarded at the end.
Yeah, we were just talking about this. I mean, 9 months ago, there was like 5 guys in a belief, and they've gone from that, or I guess 10 months ago, right? And they've gone from that to like this amazing performance in the first year of a club. So it's like great to see them achieve that. I think it's something, I think I said this on Twitter today. It's like one of the 2 greatest trophies in all of international sports. This one plus Copa Tejas. So
that's right.
Glad to see them win the other most important trophy.
No matter what Harry tells you.
No matter what. But I guess the other thing is, this will touch back to what Michael and Adrian talked about in 2022. Like, you should appreciate this because this group of people will never be together again in this moment at the same time. So like, just enjoy it. Because I'd imagine, just given the nature of this league, like some of these guys are going to the first team. A lot of these guys are going to go to VSL or somewhere else. And so we will never have, sort of this 2023 Austin FC2 season again. So like, it's amazing it turned out the way that it did, and gave a lot of fans like a lot of hope and joy in a season the first team did not necessarily give us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they've been a bright spot in this year, and just going out to the games at Palmer Field and getting to kind of have that smaller stage, lower profile sparks of joy throughout the season was very welcome. So thanks, Austin FC2. Okay, let's wrap up, Jeremiah. We would like to remind everyone to rate, review, and subscribe. I think this is going to be the last show, maybe, that we're doing the donations for reviews. We'll do that to the end of the month. So
it is. And I would say, like, it's free money. Just leave us a review. I mean, it's free. It's not money out of your pocket. It's free money to a good cause if you just leave us a review to go to community first. So we've gotten a few, but we could always take a few more.
Absolutely. Come find us on Twitter at LVHero87, at JBentley_ATX, and then at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then sign up for the Patreon. We greatly appreciate everyone's support, and would enjoy yours as well if you're not already a member there. And then sign up for Phil West Substack at verdeallday.substack.com/moontower. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week with some more Austin FC news. Hopefully, I'm guessing like maybe even it's Moon Tower Soccer recording night, so we're almost certainly going to get some major news on Tuesday.
Definitely player news. Definitely player. I really expect to be like players going out news, if nothing else.
Yeah, And so we'll definitely be covering that next week and whatever else happens. But it's off season time, which is people ask like, what are y'all going to do on the show? And like, are you serious? Like, we're going to be busier than ever. Don't you worry. So there's going to be lots to talk about. So join us again next week. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentling.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente. Oh my God.